What's up, guys? This is TheKephas. So I've been playing a lot of World of Warcraft this year. I didn't expect that I'd be playing this much WoW. Between Season of Discovery, Classic with Cataclysm, in the pre-patch and everything, then you've got Mop Remix and Retail, and now The War Within's coming out. It's just been capturing a lot of my attention. I've dipped into a little bit of everything, and it's been fun. I've had a lot of fun, but I want to focus on Cataclysm Classic and why I've kind of bounced off of it. I don't know if anybody else has, and I'm not here to tell you that you should. If you like Cataclysm Classic, that's great. I mean, sure, enjoy what you enjoy, and don't worry about me. Everybody's gonna be different, and me bouncing off of it, maybe not finding it as appealing as you do, does not invalidate how you feel about the game. So don't take this as a personal attack. Sometimes people do that with things they enjoy, and you shouldn't do that. You're more than the games that you like. One of the main reasons why I wanted to make this video is because I get a lot of requests to do Cataclysm content, making guides and stuff like that. And I'm just gonna be honest, I don't know if I will, because I don't really want to play Cataclysm Classic anymore. And I don't think it's just because the Mop Remix event is going on and the War Within's coming out. I think that there's a lot more about Cataclysm Classic that just made it hard for me to want to keep playing. I was really excited at first because it's new, it's old content, but it's new. It's coming back, so it feels new. And so I was excited, but I was also very reluctant in the first place for Cataclysm. I was okay, what are they going to do after Wrath for Classic WoW? I hope they don't do Cataclysm. I hope they go some other route, because I know where that road goes. I know that once Cataclysm drops and we keep going into the next expansions, I know where that road goes, and it's not the most exciting thing. It'd be much more exciting if they did something different, and there's also unique content in Classic WoW that, that is kind of gone in Cataclysm, because the world changes into the world that we experience in Retail. And I think that's the first major reason why I started to find Cataclysm Classic less appealing. So I've been leveling up characters a little bit, and it's slow, admittedly. I mean, which is fine. It's slower leveling content isn't a bad thing to me if it's done well, so that's kind of neither here nor there. I've gotten one character to max level, my Paladin, and I was running some dungeons. We'll talk about dungeons later. I got some things to say, but just in general, leveling up characters in Cataclysm, it started off kind of fun, but it's kind of I've fallen off of it a little bit, and it's been hard to try to get through that, because again, it's nice that it's a little bit more challenging and it's a little bit slower paced, but the thing about Classic WoW, original Classic Vanilla WoW, is number one, that old world is gone in Cataclysm, so that that was one of the appealing factors for Classic. And it's not just that content is gone and those zones are not the same as they once were. It's the way the leveling experience was in Classic WoW is very unique to Classic WoW, and that's gone now in Classic, unless you go play Classic Era, which if I was going to play Classic, that's probably what I would do from now on. Just thinking about those old zones, going to the Shimmering Flats, or going to Stranglethorn Vale in my early 30s, and then leaving for a while and then coming back. There's something about how the questing works in Classic WoW that it doesn't necessarily tell a story as well as, the Cataclysm zones do, but it allows you to feel like you're telling your story. It feels more like an open world sandbox, because you're moving from place to place. You're going back to places that you once were, once you're a little bit stronger. You've got quests that are sending you from one zone to another. I think of going from Booty Bay, down to the Shimmering Flats, back up to Booty Bay, and going back and forth, doing a little bit questing here, a little bit there, going back and doing more. That sort of gameplay, it may not be the most efficient if you're trying to level up fast, but it's fun and appealing in a way that the modern version, which is the post Cataclysm version, isn't. The post Cataclysm version does tell a more cohesive story in each zone, but it's also more on rails. It's more linear. And the worst thing is that in Cataclysm Classic, The same zones that exist in Cataclysm Classic, you can play in retail. They're the same zones. They tell the same stories. You do the same quests. There's nothing unique about Cataclysm Classic in that regard. And to make matters worse is in Cataclysm Classic, it's weird because the leveling is slower, but you still outpace those zones. And so before you're finished with the story of a zone, you're moving on to the next zone so that you can continue to level up at a decent speed. And that's even without heirlooms. If you're actually using heirlooms to try to level up faster, then you're getting through zones long before you're even like 2/3 of the way through them. So you're not finishing any of the stories. There's no incentive to finish the stories. And this is one of those things that some people may not agree with, because there are people that don't like the scaling in retail, but I think that the scaling in retail actually makes leveling better in these zones and in the style of, zones telling a story, because it allows you to stay in the zone until you finish it, and you don't feel like you have to leave it until you're done. And so you're able to complete the story, and it feels more rewarding because of it. I personally am a big fan of scaling in leveling in WoW, and I like that once you hit max level, the scaling kind of goes back, and zones have a cap, like Cataclysm, like vanilla zones are like capped at 30, and so on and so forth. I like that because it allows me to level through them at a good pace. I'm leveling quickly, but I'm also able to finish the zones. And so I actually like the scaling in WoW. I know some people might not like that, but I actually think that the scaling is a good thing, and it was good for the game. And I think it shows in Cataclysm when you're out leveling zones that you haven't even finished the story in. So it doesn't feel totally classic, and it doesn't feel totally retail. Point being is, if I'm going to have the classic leveling experience, I would rather it be in vanilla WoW. And if I want to have the Cataclysm leveling experience, I would rather it be in retail, because those would be more fun experiences in my book than Cataclysm. So that's one of the major things that I think is a massive step down in terms of the direction that Cataclysm has gone in. And I would apply a lot of the same logic to class designs. And this is, again, I know there are people that may not agree, and that's totally fine. It also depends on what class you're talking about. I would say that, like, the classes that I enjoy playing and the ones I play the most, a lot of what made them feel unique in Classic has been stripped away. And what they resemble now is like the early stages of what they become in modern WoW. So, like, for example, the Paladin now has holy power. And like, when I think of the Paladin, I think of the old Paladin that, had seals and, auras and buffs, that sort of stuff. And you're building around, that system. And then you have the Paladin that has holy power, and you're building and spending, the basically combo points, right? And admittedly, like in Cataclysm, you have a little bit of both. You still have your seals. It's been dumbed down quite a bit though, which is kind of whatever. But now you're focusing more on the holy power system, and I don't think that the holy power system in Cataclysm is nearly as fun to play as it is in modern WoW. I think the modern WoW version is much more fun. It's a lot more abilities for sure, but it's just more enjoyable overall. I do not like Inquisition. I think it's one of the biggest reasons why. I don't like these temporary buff abilities, and I feel like almost every class I play has some version of these temporary abilities that I have to keep up, and a lot of the classes feel very similar in Cataclysm because of that, whether it's putting up, keeping Inquisition up, keeping up Serpent Sting, keeping up some poison, keeping up some disease. It's everything is doing some variation of that, and that's fine to have classes that do that. But when every class has that, it just like it kind of feels, I don't know, not as exciting to me. And so, like, another example, big one for me, is hunters. It's like the hunter now in Cataclysm is, switched over from mana to focus, which is what the modern hunter has. And like, I think that is better in some ways, but at the same time, I think that there was something cool about having mana. And like, I love the Wrath of the Lich King Hunter, where I'm like switching between Viper aspect and aspect of the Hawk, you know, to regenerate my mana and then switch over to do a bunch more damage. I kind of like that playstyle. I thought that was kind of fun. And also in Cataclysm, you don't really have to take care of your pet anymore. Like, you don't have to feed them, you don't have to keep them happy, you don't have to keep ammo anymore. That's all gone. And I think those things were, those traits about a hunter were really appealing. They were really unique and made me feel like a hunter, and was part of the hunter experience, you know, going to town to restock, that kind of stuff. I don't feel like I have to do any of that anymore in classic. And so a lot of the classes, they don't seem as, again, much like the zones, they're not as appealing as their original vanilla counterparts or their modern WoW counterparts. In both instances, I think that both of those, they're in completely different directions, and both versions are much more appealing in my personal opinion. So my experience in terms of like hitting max level and doing in-game dungeons, like leveling even in the Cataclysm dungeons, has been a little bit unpleasant. I haven't had any negative experiences directly, but I have had my time wasted, and it's frustrating. So like, I've got one character at max level, and so I'm like running dungeons, getting to heroics, trying to run heroics. Heroics is where it really gets bad. Like, it's really, oh man, it's something. But you know, so like I'm limited on how much time I have to play a lot of times. When I do play, like, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just run some dungeons tonight and get through it. And when like half of my dungeons are failing, it's really frustrating. And the reason why they're failing isn't necessarily what you'd think. It's because there are people that act so belligerent and get angry and fly off the handle at any mistake that someone makes, that they just like kill the dungeon entirely, and people leave over it, and people just start like fighting, and it's ridiculous. So Cataclysm was, if you remember back in the day, the dungeons were hard because people had gone from like the AoE fests in Wrath, and dungeons were super easy, and then in Cataclysm they were harder. Enemies were stronger, they hit harder, we weren't as powerful, we didn't have gear upgrades, and it really threw people for a loop. But one of the aspects of the dungeons that I think that people don't think about, because in Cataclysm now, in Cataclysm Classic, the dungeons are tuned to what they were later in the expansion. So in other words, they're easier. They're easier than they would have otherwise been in the beginning of original Cataclysm. So the reason why Cataclysm dungeons are hard per se isn't so much because of the stats, it's because of the mechanics. So like in vanilla and TBC Wrath, there aren't a lot of mechanics. Dungeons aren't mechanic heavy. Not too much. There's a little bit here and there. There's a couple things you have to do. Like, you know, there's some pretty fun fights in Wrath that are like it's why people hate Oculus, because Oculus is so much more mechanic heavy. You have to ride on the mount. You have to like get used to these new, like this new system of flying around and like fighting in the air and using these vehicle abilities. It's more mechanic heavy. That's all it is, right? And so in Cataclysm, you have dungeons that like, they're not Oculus, but they are more mechanic heavy. You know, there are all of these mechanics that one person can screw up the whole fight, right? And so what you have is a bunch of people that are trying to get through this as quickly as possible because they've ran 100 of these things, and they don't want to wipe, they don't want to fail, they just want to get through it, they don't want to have to run back in. And then you get somebody that's new, that doesn't know the mechanics. And it's not their fault that they don't know the mechanics, okay? Because they're new. And if you've ever played any game that's challenging or has mechanics, you have to learn the mechanics. And that's why a lot of people say, well, it's not hard. Yeah, it's not hard because you know the mechanics. You've forgotten that there was a time where you didn't know the mechanics, and maybe you picked up on it. Maybe you picked up on it on your first try, and you're a genius, and you're just a god wizard at this game, and you should get paid $1 million for just how amazing you are at this game and become king of the world because of how amazing you are at a video game. But there are a lot of people that go into these blind and don't know the mechanics. And so, for example, we're in a dungeon and we're doing the Black Rock Fortress. I don't know, dude. There are so many Blackrock. It's the Cataclysm Blackrock dungeon, not the raid, the dungeon. I forget what it's called. There are tons of Blackrock dungeons. It's insane. So it's the Cataclysm one. You know, you got the first boss where he blows up and you got to get out of range. And of course, that always wipes somebody, you know, because people forget. I forgot once, you know, it's whatever. But then you have the second boss where it's mechanic heavy. It's more mechanic heavy. If you don't know the mechanics, it's like there are these NPCs and you got to stand in front of the beam so that the NPC doesn't get turned into a dragon. And if you stand in the beam too long, then you'll get turned into the dragon. And so the tank has to stand in front of one, and then like 2 other people have to stand in front of the other 2. Like it gets a little bit harder in heroics, and you gotta keep track of this debuff. It's a little bit, and then you're also trying to kill the thing, and you know, so there's a lot going on. You know, compared to like old bosses where you just like you go in and you kill the boss, maybe you throw an interrupt, you know, maybe there's a couple ads. You know, it's a little bit more than that. You know, it's just a little bit more. And so I'll get these tanks that are new and don't know. They just don't know. They don't know that there's a beam mechanic, and they don't know what they're doing. And so inevitably something gets turned into a dragon and the group wipes. And every time, I mean this, every single time this happens, somebody in the group just goes off. All caps, loses their minds. These idiot tanks, these newbies don't know this game. And they just like go on a fit, berate the tank, and either the tank just leaves or the DPS leaves, and then everybody leaves, and then you're just sitting there like, I just wasted 20 minutes. Good. And so like this happens a lot. And like I said, I understand people want to get through the content. But, and again, like you're doing a lot of content, people want to get through it, but I don't understand why people berate people for not knowing the content. Like I know there are guides. I know like you can go look up guides. This is the thing though. It's like there are what 9 heroics in Cataclysm. I think it's like 9. You pick random and you get a random one, and in each heroic there's like what 4 or 5 bosses. You know, it's a lot, and each boss has a range of mechanics. Some of them are easier than others. Some of them are, you know, a little bit more involved. And so you're basically expected by the community to have an encyclopedic knowledge on every boss from every random heroic and never make a mistake. And if you do, people are going to lose their minds. It happens. Like it's crazy. Even like for like in leveling dungeons, new people are coming into the game, and it's the same thing. Tanks get it really bad. I feel bad for tanks. I don't know if it's like this in retail. I haven't seen, people just seem not to talk in dungeons and retail, but they're also a lot easier. And so yeah, it's bad. And so like I kind of quit running dungeons. I was like, I don't want to do this. It's a waste of time. And these people are just mean. Like, it's like if you would just shut up, maybe explain what the mechanic is and just real quick, or, you know, whatever, then, and not leave, maybe we could just get through it and somebody learns the mechanics and you move on. And yeah, it sucks because you probably feel like you have to do that every time. But, you know, that brings up a question of, you know, something we talk about. It has been talked about to death about, you know, the idea of punishment and running back to dungeons and not just spawning near the boss and trying again. You know, those sorts of things that are frustrating. You know, and I think there's a conversation that can be had about socializing and how important having solo content is in the game and different things like that. And so I think that there are a lot of people that are having a hard time coming to terms with just, look, like this is what happens when you have a system that, you know, expedites the dungeon finding process, and you're going to get people that aren't as good or don't know things and have to learn them. It's just, this is the price you pay for not taking the time to form your own group. And that's fine because we all want to get through them faster, but it's just, I don't know, it's really bad in Cataclysm. I think there's another video I'd like to make in the future talking about solo content, group content, you know, that socializing, that kind of stuff. Like, can you have pugs and also have hard content? I don't think you can. Personally, I think that's why MOP is so much fun. Like the MOP remix event is so much fun and chill because we're grouping up in pugs and it's easy and no one's mad, you know. And so we're all just like, hey, I've had a lot of fun chatting with people and being social, and it's not hard. It's not gratifying in that way, but that's kind of the thing though. It's like if you're gonna have random people, maybe you can't have harder or at least more mechanically intensive combat or mechanics in fights and boss fights, because you're gonna inevitably run into people that just don't know. You know, so that, I don't know, man. Like there's a conversation there, but either way, it's really bad in Cataclysm. It's really, really, really bad in Cataclysm. And from what I understand, I didn't do a lot of dungeons in Wrath. and I heard it was just as bad in Wrath. So if it's anything like it is in Cataclysm, then I understand why people quit. I do. I wouldn't want to do it either. You know, like no one needs that kind of like. I mean, it's bad. Like I don't know how people don't get banned for the things I've heard people say. Like it's so unforgivably bad that, and I hate how often it happens too. I think that's the other thing that bothers me. It's not just that it happens. It's like it's how often it happens. You know, it's really toxic. And like I'm not here. Listen. Classic WoW community, this is not an indictment against you as a whole, okay? It's just that like I think it has something to do with the nature of the game. It has something to do with people that are seasoned and know the content, and so I think that has something to do with it. And I, like I said, I don't know if it's as bad in other versions of the game, but it just, in my experience, it was really bad. So that was kind of the last straw for me, where it's like, okay, group content isn't fun, leveling isn't fun, the classes aren't really that fun, and there's nothing else really in Cataclysm to do. There's dailies, and I am not going to rep grind all those reps again. I'm not doing it. I did it once years ago. I have no interest in doing that again. So I think that's kind of the end of classic WoW for me for now, for a while. Maybe. I'm not saying I'd never come back, but I think that's it for the classic WoW version of the game. That may not be it for classic era. I think I would definitely be interested in going back and like playing more classic era. There are still people that play that, and that is a unique experience, especially when they do things like, you know, Season of Discovery. If they can do more, I don't think that the book is done on classic WoW, but I definitely think that for me, the book is done on the classic WoW that is going through all the expansions, because it's going to be the same in MoP. It's going to be the same in Warlords. It's going to be the same in Legion. I've been down that road before. I know where it goes. And if we're going to go down that road, I hate to say it, I would just rather play retail. Or just, if not, if like, say the War Within turns out to be a bad expansion and like, this didn't age well. No, you know what? I would just rather play a different game, because there are plenty of other games out there to play. So that's kind of where I am, and I'm sorry to say that. I understand why Blizzard went this way. It's the easy way to go, and I'm sure there are lots of people that are having fun with Cataclysm, but I'm not one of them. And so that's why I don't think I'll be doing any Cataclysm content, you guys. I think I'm good on that, but I did want to share my thoughts on it and give my feedback and my impressions of it. So I would love to hear what people think. Try to be nice. We don't need to act like we're in a Cataclysm dungeon, okay? So let's try to be respectful. If you're having fun, great. Keep having fun. Don't worry about me. I'm just a guy with an opinion. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for hearing me out and checking out this video, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button. And feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you'd like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is TheKephas. Until next time.